Hasn't Boris Johnson, frankly, not just with what's happened in the last 48 hours, but with virtually everything he's done as Prime Minister, isn't he turning his back on the kind of conservatism that wins elections?
I would agree with you in terms of your overall analysis, Boris. He probably wants to spend much more money than I would. But you identified two different arguments in your introduction, which I thought was very good. And I fall into the category of saying, look, let's be realistic. We are fighting a crisis, a war that none of us can remember in terms of the way it's overwhelmed not only this country, but the rest of the world. And we have to adopt policies that work under those circumstances. My bigger concern, which you didn't touch on, is whether the money will be well spent in the next year or so. And that's my concern. I think they've got the policy right for now, but they're going to have to show, government is going to have to show that they're spending the money in the right way as we get out of this crisis.
Yeah, no, look, I'm in total agreement with you on that. And I mean, the news that we got overnight, that the National Health Service is about to employ 42 senior managers on average salaries of £225,000, doesn't give much confidence. I'd love to see a really big debate about fundamental reform and an analysis why France and Germany get a better health return for the same level of expenditure. I really, really would. But back to the points about conservatism. Corporation tax is going up. Employers' national insurance is going up. And taxes on dividends are going up. There are 6 million people out there. 6 million people running their own companies. 6 million people, some sole traders. 6 million people who actually want this government to use the opportunity of Brexit to lift the burden of tax and regulation off their back. And frankly, we're seeing no regulatory reform of any kind and taxes going up. Isn't this the wrong message to business? And second point I'd like to put to you, please, is I get the point that we had to, with furlough schemes and other things, borrow money at levels we've never done, frankly, outside of wartime. I get that. But rather than burdening business, rather than sending a very bad message to the rest of the world in terms of investing here, why not just scrap HS2 and save us the bother of putting up taxes?
I won't go down the line of HS2. We could debate that at length on a separate...
But it's a fair proposition, isn't it?
But there is a broader issue you are raising, and that is, are there alternatives? Are they quick fixes? Under what circumstances? And my view is we still have 8,000 people in hospital from COVID. There are 150 a day dying. We have 35 to 40,000 cases. We are not through COVID yet. And therefore, we have to plan for the period beyond COVID. But to start suggesting that we can start dealing with regulation and all sorts of other things at the point when we are still dealing with the world's largest pandemic in our lifetimes, really, I think, doesn't meet consideration.
Right, so you're saying that government simply is overwhelmed with, and you know, you're quite right, it's an unprecedented situation. The government's too overwhelmed to do those things. All right, OK, if I accept that point, and it's a perfectly reasonably and fairly put point, but raising taxes at all levels on employers, both small and large, is the wrong thing to be doing, particularly with parts of the private sector who've had a terrible economic time during this pandemic. It's the wrong solution at the wrong time for millions of those small businesses.
You have to do something, and the Labour Party at the moment is falling into a massive hole by saying, well, you're doing it wrong, but you haven't put an alternative. And they have no idea of an alternative. And you could criticise whatever policy is adopted. I've expressed just now concerns about what benefits one will get from the money coming in. But we are still in the middle of a pandemic. We face enormous problems. And under those circumstances, I'm willing to give the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and the Secretary of State for Health the benefit of the doubt and say it's the right way at this moment, but you better get it right in terms of not only raising the money, but implementing the expenditure and controlling that expenditure.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Lord Hayward, for coming on and joining us here on GB News. Great to have you on as a guest. Please.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.